Hello, this video is another do-it-yourself video on how to change a strut on a 2000 Pontiac G5. I've seen a couple of these videos on the web, and a couple of good ones. They're just some things that they didn't quite explain to help me out, so once I figured it out, I thought I'd just share it with you guys. So here's a picture of the strut off. I'll tell you how to get it off the car first. It's really easy, actually. It's one of the easiest jobs going. I think it might even be easier than doing brakes, I don't know. Anyway, jack the car up. Secure it with a jack stand, and then let me move my light here so you can see better. And then you're going to need a few tools here, but not too many. Very first thing is the stabilizer link right here. Goes down to the sway bar, or stabilizer bar. It's well, basically it's a ball and socket joint there, and there's an 18mm nut on the front of it. And this is an 07, so it's like 5 years old. There was some rust that had built up on the threads. I should have wire brushed it before I started, but instead I just took the impact gun, threw it on there, and tried to back the nut off. And the nut backed off a ways, and then as soon as it backed up onto the rust, the whole bolt started to spin, so the ball inside of this socket started to spin. The whole thing spun. But when I tried to put the nut back on, or, tighten it up, it still spun, like the whole thing spun. So the nut was locked on all that rust. So what I had to do is reach behind the strut, so the strut would go here, and then the nut would be on the outside of it. I had to reach behind the strut with a pair of vice grips and grip onto this area right here. Really don't like doing that. I probably damaged that boot. In fact, I think I did a little bit, so I might not get as much life out of this because of that, but really there was nothing else I could do in that situation, so I clamped it, and then I could get the bolt off. So my advice, wire wheel that, or wire brush it before you actually back it off. Second thing is, there are these bolts that do not have a hex head on them, so you're not going to get a box end wrench. They're not intended for that. There are only two parallel surfaces there. The rest of it's all round. These go in the top of the knuckle here where the strut goes in. There are two of them. So basically, I don't know if you can see right there, but on this part of the bolt, there are teeth that bite into this surface. So the front of the car is up here, and the bolts go in this direction. I'm not sure if it matters, but that's how they come out of this car. So the head was to the front bumper, and the nut that's going to go on here goes to the back bumper. So anyway, so what you want to do is line up that head so that if you had to later, you could get a wrench on that. It's a 15mm wrench. 15mm that goes on there. Sorry about that. I said 14 earlier. It's 15. So line that up so that if in the future you had to get a wrench on there, you could at this angle. And then, well, I guess for the disassembly, it's an 18mm nut. Back the nut off, back it off, take it on off a couple times, clean the threads, put the nut back on, and then use a hammer to pound it out, because with these teeth, you're not going to just push out with your fingers. So pound it out, pound them both out, take them out, and then take the strut in your hand, push it in towards the car, and move it back just a couple inches, and that just makes it free of this whole mechanism. So the next thing you're going to do is take a 13mm socket, a deep socket, and throw it on back here. This is a picture of the driver's side that's currently assembled, and you're going to take these two nuts off here that hold the top of the strut mount on, and I found the one that was closest to the firewall a little bit of a pain on the passenger side, but anyway, I still got it on with the deep socket. Take those two off, leave the third one on, and then reach your hand down underneath where the wheel, between the wheel and the fender, and grab hold of the big spring and the strut mechanism, and then take that third nut off, and then get the thing out. So then you got it out, and I should say I did this job because I was hearing a clunking, which is probably two reasons why anybody would replace a strut is they hear a noise or it's leaking and it failed inspection because of that. So here's my old strut, and it's the original one with 140,000 kilometers on it. And what I found as soon as I got it off is, and it's super cold in the garage, so the oil's pretty thick, but the little short stroke movements like this, not sure if you can see, but there's almost no resistance. Almost no resistance there. Now the long strokes, there is some resistance, but this strut has about 1.5 inches of free travel. Yeah, you can see better like that. That's all just about free travel. So this really wasn't doing a whole lot to dampen joints or dampen bumps and all that stuff. So these things have pretty powerful springs in them, and I did one time without using a spring compressor when I was like 17. And well, anyway, you're taking your life into your own hands. I recommend for like $20 on sale at Princess Auto, you can get these things. So you're going to take these ones are 13/16 deep socket on there, clamp these guys on both sides of the spring, try to make it even on both sides, and then tighten the spring down. You don't need to compress this spring so that the whole thing is like 2 inches tall. You don't need to do that. It would be super hard on the spring. You might even break it and hurt yourself. All you're going to do is compress these tighten spring compressors until the spring becomes floppy, and maybe a little bit more than that, just so it's easy to line up the strut mount. So anyway, so you got the spring compressed. Now you're faced with this silly problem that I don't know why car manufacturers do this, but GM's not alone. Here's the top of the strut mount. Get my light back. Top of the strut mount has this shoulder on it. So you can look down in this hole and see the nut that goes on the top of the strut shaft. Right there, it's loose now. I've got it all loosened off, just sitting there. You can see the nut, but it's recessed down in. So you can't get a wrench on it. And so I put a deep socket on there and hit it with my impact gun, and it seemed to loosen up a bit, but after a while, I noticed that it was just the piston in the strut that was actually spinning, not the nut itself. So what you need to do is concoct a little mechanism like this. You need to have a socket that you can put a wrench on, and this is a 13/16 spark plug socket, and because it's a spark plug socket, it has this hex top on the socket. So it's a 3/8 drive socket, but also you can get a wrench on it. This one's a 20 millimeter wrench. So anyway, so you get this socket on here, and then inside of that, come on, there. So now I got the wrench on the top of that socket. Inside of that, I've got a 1/4 inch drive with an extension and a 10 mil socket there, because this strut, the top of it's a 10 mil. What this does is it allows you to hold the strut still with the 1/4 inch drive, 10 mil socket, and you can turn the nut loose with this wrench. And so that's the best way to do it. I actually have a kit that's designed for this very thing. I bought a Canadian Tire. It's made by Mastercraft, and the sockets go up to 3/4, and I needed the very next one. So I've got the whole kit. These are like a through socket kit or something it's called. And basically, there's the socket. There's the part that goes on your nut. And then the ratchet, you can see the ratchet has a hole right through the center of it. Under there. Ratchet has a hole right through, so the ratchet goes on like this. And now, you can see right through, and that's where you can get access to the top of the strut. Anyway, I had the kit. I just needed the next size up, and I scratched my head for a while and thought about taking a 3/4 inch or a deep socket that was, an old one, and drilling out the center of it to get a drive socket down there, and then welding a bar on the side of it. But fortunately, I noticed that this spark plug socket has the grooves. So anyway, that's how you get that bad boy off. Now, there's another key piece that you got to watch out for with these silly struts, and that is lining up where the spring goes back in. And if you get this wrong, and you put the car all back together, and you turn the wheel, you'll hear a bunch of clicking sounds. So there's the spring. I don't know if it matters to get to the top and bottom. I think it actually does. Yeah, of course it does, because it's bigger on the bottom than on the top. But anyway, there's the end of the spring. You can see right there. The end of that spring has to sit right in this groove. And there's the side view. You can see the side view there. The spring has to go, the bottom end of the spring has to go right in that groove right there. And if it doesn't, and when you turn the wheel, it can have a tendency for the spring to travel inside the strut, which you don't want that. So anyway, the bottom of the string goes in that groove, and there's an equivalent groove. It's less pronounced, but in the top, I'll show you. You can actually just look at your old one and see the dirt mark, and you can tell where it went. The top of the spring goes right there. So anyway, make sure you get the spring lined up with both the top and bottom parts of the strut. Okay. When you're changing a strut, I've got the dirt boot on here, dust boot, and then there's also a big neoprene stopper that's hidden under there that I already put on. I'm not going to take it off right now. But so there's that, and then what else can I show you guys? There's one other little figure around little piece that I want to make sure that you understand here. There's also this big bushing that actually sits on top of the cup that goes on top of the spring. So that bushing goes in there, and I think that's all the loose parts. When the strut mounts go bad, if you look inside the strut, you can see the rubber deteriorating. One of the stupid things I got here is, this is the new strut, 10 millimeter bolt on top, but you can see the threads here do not go, well, I don't know if you can see or not, but trust me, they don't go all the way down to where the shaft bottoms out. The threads go about 80% of the way down, and then there's a non-threaded, larger diameter piece right above where the shaft, the top of the shaft is. That's where the strut mount sits over. But the new bolt they gave me, this is the new lock nut that came with the new Strut. When I put it on there, the lock nut's so tight, it only goes down about, well, it barely even goes, it doesn't even go on all the way, as the lock nut should. It won't even go on all the way by hand. But when I put a wrench on it, in order to take up all the play with the new Strut and the old Strut mount, I got to crank that nut so hard I know I'm exceeding the 50 foot-pounds of torque that's this 10 millimeter top of the Strut shaft it says in the manual. So I'm going to not use the new nut. I'm just going to go back to the old one. The kit came with a new nut and a new spacer. New nut, new spacer. I'm just going to use the old nut, which of course I can't find right now. Where the heck is that thing? Oh, there we go. So I'm just going to use the old nut that came with the spacer attached right to it, and because I know it threads on the new shaft quite nicely, and it still is a locking nut, but it's not as tight as the original. So there you go. You're going to put the whole thing back together and then make sure that spring is lined up and gently release your Strut spring compressors. I'm not sure if you need to do an alignment after this. I guess there is some play in these bolts to hold the Strut to the steering knuckle, but I don't know. I'll see how the tires are wearing or if the thing drives straight and decide if I need to do an alignment after that. Okay, very good. Enjoy your day.